Welcome back to the U.S. Navy History Podcast. I am Dale, your captain host, and I am joined by Christoph, your XO host.
That's me. Hey,
That is you.
good to see you, Dale.
Just good to be seen. So, how are you feeling? You ready to get into some battles?
Battles? No, but I'm okay discussing previous battles.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking
Okay,
about.
well, yeah, I'm ready. I'm gung ho.
Oh, no, I don't.
I didn't know if you
Yeah,
had something going down that you needed like an extra, like a wheelman or something. I mean, I
I
could.
wouldn't come to you. Nah,
You may want to reconsider.
I'm the professional driver here.
Okay, well then, oh, it's true. Maybe a second story man. I'm great at telling two stories simultaneously.
Oh, wah, wah. All right, so we are still in the American Revolution. We are in the Northern Theater of the American Revolutionary War after Saratoga. And we are going to be talking about the rest of the battles for this theater. And then next time we'll move on to, I believe, the Southern Theater.
Okay.
So, are you ready to get underway?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
All right, so the Battle of Gloucester. In April of 1775, the province of Massachusetts Bay was a powder keg waiting to explode. Tensions between British colonists and the royal governor, General Thomas Gage, reached a breaking point. It's, like a historical pressure cooker about to blow. So here's the scene. General Gage sends troops to Concord to hunt down military supplies squirreled away by the colonists. But guess what? The colonists catch wind of this, and on April 19th, they are ready for a showdown. It's, like the Revolutionary War version of who's got the ammo.
Yeah.
So militia companies keep rolling in like they're late for a party, and the British troops find themselves in a bit of a pickle. Besieged in Boston. This siege was like a giant do not enter sign for land across the city. Now, the British Army is all eyes on the Navy. They're like, hey, Navy, can you hook us up with some fresh provisions? Around the city, folks are playing hide and seek with their livestock and hay. They're moving cows and bales like it's a barnyard ballet. And meanwhile, General Gage and Vice Admiral Samuel Graves are sending out expeditions to coastal communities. Their mission? Raiding for more livestock and hay, and maybe intercepting a colonial ship or two. A nautical scavenger hunt. There's more. With these expeditions, land troops or sailors round up livestock. Sometimes they get a huge surprise. Picture this. It's May 27th, near Boston, and colonists and army troops are having a little tiff over supplies on a nearby island. It's like a heated argument between two neighborhood barbecues. Hey, those are my cows. No, they're mine. Now, August 5th, the HMS Falcon, under the command of Captain John Lindsay, sails into Ipswich Bay. Lindsay's got a mission: find the livestock. So he sends a barge of men to the shore like a seafarer shopping spree. But hold your horses, or, your muskets. A local farmer and a few other gutsy locals drive that barge off with a volley of musket fire. They're like, you want our cows? Take this lead salad instead. Now, Lindsay's undeterred, and he sends the barge to check out a schooner in the harbor. But guess what? This ship is carrying nothing but ballast. It is the world's most disappointing treasure hunt. Lindsay, he keeps cruising around Cape Ann, impressing some men from local ports and ships. And by impressing, I mean he's recruiting them forcibly.
Oh.
On a fateful day, August 8th or 9th, sources really don't agree, Captain Lindsay and the HMS Falcon had his eyes on the horizon. Two American schooners were making a dash for Salem, their sails catching the morning breeze. Lindsay, he didn't waste time. He swiftly captured one of the schooners without a fuss. putting crews aboard the prize. But the other schooner, oh, it knew the waters well. The captain steered deep into Gloucester Harbor, grounding the vessel near 5 Pound Island shortly after noon. Undeterred, Lindsay forced a local fisherman to pilot both the Falcon and the prize schooner to an anchorage in the harbor. Meanwhile, he dispatched 36 men on 3 small boats, led by his lieutenant, to take the second schooner. Among these crews were 10 impressed Americans, including 4 from Gloucester. But the townspeople of Gloucester weren't about to let this British escapade go unnoticed. They raised the alarm, and militia company sprang into action, led by Captains Joseph Foster and Bradbury Sanders. Armed with muskets and 2 aging swivel guns, they opened fire from the shore as the small boats approached the schooner. The British, they rowed faster, boarding the grounded schooner. But here's the twist. They were effectively trapped by constant fire from the shore. Lindsay, ever the distraction artist, fired the Falcon's gun on the town.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Chaos ensued, but the attempt was unsuccessful. The lieutenant got wounded, and a few men escaped in a skiff around 1600, leaving the Falcon's master in charge. The remaining men on the grounded ship eventually taken prisoner, including the impressed Americans. By 1900, all the small boats had been captured. Lindsay decided to send the prize schooner in to recover his men. But here's the kicker. Lindsay suspected that the crew of the captured ship had overpowered the prize crew and reclaimed the vessel. All right. So in October of 1775, Admiral Graves had a bone to pick. He ordered Captain Henry Mowat on an expedition of reprisal against New England's coastal communities. And guess what? Gloucester was on the hit list. Why? Among other justification, Captain Lindsay's defeat at Gloucester was like a red flag to the bull. But Mowat, ever the pragmatic captain, chose not to attack Gloucester. Why? He felt its buildings were too widely spaced for cannonades to make any significant impact. And here's a twist. Reports of Mowat's only major action, the burning of Falmouth, echoed across the Atlantic. The Second Continental Congress took notice and said, hey, let's establish the Continental Navy. So that is the Battle of Gloucester.
Who knew that the Continental Navy sprouted from such humble beginnings? I guess it had to start somewhere.
I did.
Well, of course. Yes, you're the one who conveyed the information. I'm just speaking on behalf of the audience who's like, oh, that's interesting. That's why I keep coming back to listen to this podcast.
All right. So now we're going to move on to the burning of Falmouth. So, Captain Henry Mowat, a man of naval exploits and fiery resolve, found himself in the port of Falmouth, which is now present-day Portland, Maine. And during the tumultuous days of the Thompson's War in May of 1775, local patriots had already captured several ships carrying supplies destined for Boston, along with the weaponry from Fort Pownall at the mouth of the Penobscot River. But let's rewind a bit. The British Army, fresh from the battles of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775, found themselves besieged in the city of Boston. The Royal Navy, under the command of Vice Admiral Samuel Graves, he had a clear mission: suppress the burgeoning rebellion. And how did he plan to do it?
With force.
By scouring vessels for military stores and potential communications.
Oh, okay.
You know, a naval detective story.
That sounds good.
Searching for clues. Yeah, searching for clues on the open water. So let's get back to Mowat. Graves had issued admiralty orders on July of 1775, and by October 4th, they got to Mowat. His task: carry on such operations upon the sea coast as you shall judge most effective for suppressing the rebellion. Strong words, right?
Oh, yeah.
But Graves didn't stop there. he specifically ordered Moet to lay waste, burn, and destroy such seaport towns as are accessible to His Majesty's ships.
Holy cow, that's a lot of damage.
One town was particularly in his sights, Machias, where the ship Margarita had been taken. And so Moet set sail, flames dancing in his wake, ready to execute his orders. So he set sail from Boston Harbor on October 6, 1775. His vessel, the 16-gun hydrographic survey sloop HMS Canciux. Alongside him were the 20-gun ship Cat, the 12-gun schooner HMS Halifax, and the bomb sloop, the HMS Spitfire. I love some of these names that they give.
Oh, yeah.
Type of boats. Like a bomb sloop, the Spitfire. Come on.
That's perfect.
He also had the supply ship, the HMS Summertree.
Some are better than others. Well, they can't all be Spitfires and Dreadnoughts, you know?
Yeah. Now, Moat's orders were broad. Carry out operations upon the sea coast as he should judge, or most effective for suppressing the rebellion, as we had covered earlier. But when it came to harbors on Cape Ann, he hesitated. Why?
I don't know.
The buildings were too widely spaced. Remember? We talked about this for the last battle.
That's right.
So on October 16, Moat's fleet reached the outer parts of Falmouth Harbor and anchored there. The people of Falmouth had mixed reactions. Some recognized the Canciux and believed that there was no danger. Others had memories of Thompson's War and were more suspicious. So, the town was caught between hope and wariness.
That's a very difficult place to be.
Yes. So the next day dawns. It's windless, and Moet keyed the ships into the inner harbor, anchoring them near the town. He sent one of his lieutenants ashore with a proclamation, quote, "I am here to execute a just punishment for the town's state of rebellion." And the ultimatum was clear. Evacuate within 2 hours. So the townspeople faced a stark choice. And they set a delegation to plead with Moet for mercy. So he had terms. Swear an oath of alliance to King George, surrender all small arms and powder, and hand over their gun carriages. But the oaths were left unsworn, and only a few muskets were surrendered. And the people of Falmouth began to move out of the town.
That had to be difficult. That's crazy. I mean, the transportation system back then wasn't what it is now, and moving to a different town would have been difficult.
Yeah, they had to load up their horse and buggies in 2 hours of everything they could carry.
Oh my gosh.
So Captain Moet had set a deadline for the town of Gloucester. By 0940 on October 18th, the town appeared eerily deserted. Moet, he was not one to waste time. He ran a red flag up the masthead, and then the order echoed across the fleet. Begin firing. Incendiary cannonballs rained down upon the harbor installations, igniting the town. So, as always with this show, arson.
Oh, got a drink?
Got a drink. Witnesses describe the scene. A horrible shower of balls from 3 to 9 pounds in weight. Bombs, carcasses, live shells, grape shot, and musket balls. The firing was relentless, like a tempest of destruction. And it lasted until 1800.
Wow.
But Moat wasn't satisfied. When the bombardment seemed inadequate, he sent a landing party ashore. Their mission?
Lay waste?
To set fire to any buildings that had survived the initial
Oh my
onslaught.
gosh. Oh, that's
Arson.
more arson. Ooh.
So the town militia, busy helping their families to safety, offered pretty much little resistance. But some of the British Marines who landed were caught in the crossfire. By evening, according to Moat's account, quote, the body of the town was in one flame.
Ooh. Lyrically, that's beautiful, but realistically, that's awful.
Yeah, the once thriving Gloucester now lay in ruins, consumed by fire. So after the fiery bombardment, Captain Moat sailed on to Booth Bay, where he continued his destructive spree. A few houses went up in flames, and he raided for livestock. But, alas, his expedition was faltering. The decks of some of his ships weren't adequately braced for prolonged gunnery, and many of his guns had jumped their mounts. He returned to Boston, where winter was settling in, and when Admiral Graves got the boot in December of 1775, these punitive raids gradually faded away.
So let me get this straight. He decimated Machias in winter. Or as winter
Just
was coming?
before winter. Yeah, just before winter.
That stinks. That's all.
Yeah, it does. One of the last acts of fiery retribution was the burning of Norfolk, Virginia on January 1st, 1776. So let's assess the damage in Falmouth, shall we? More than 400 buildings and houses are recorded as damaged or destroyed by fire. 11 small vessels gone right there in the harbor. 4 more captured, all at the cost of 1 brave soul killed and another wounded. And the townspeople left to fend for themselves in the bitter winter. Imagine a chilly Falmouth where there's no lodging, eating, or housekeeping.
I can see why privateering became popular. That they just took everything. That's awful.
But fear not. On October 26th, the town rallied. They formed a committee to raise funds for the distressed families. Over 1,000 people, including at least 160 families, were left homeless by the raid. And the Massachusetts Provisional Congress stepped in, authorizing payments and arranging corn distribution.
That's great.
Yeah. And finally, in 1791, Congress granted compensation in the form of land tracts. These tracts became the new towns of New Portland and Freeman. The news of the raid on Falmouth reverberated across the American colonies. Propagandists seized upon its cruelty, painting it as an emblem of British oppression. The Massachusetts Provisional Congress, not one to sit idle, authorized the issuance of letters of marque.
Yeah, baby.
And then the Second Continental Congress got wind of the event. And just as they were discussing the news, word arrived of King George's proclamation of rebellion. Outrage surged through the halls of Congress, and they resolved to recommend that all provinces declare themselves self-governing and independent of British rule or influence. The attack on Falmouth lit a fire under Congress's plans for the establishment of a Continental Navy. And on October 30th, they authorized the commissioning of 2 ships for the protection and defense of the United Colonies. Across the Atlantic, England received the news, initially dismissed as rebel propaganda. It soon became clear that Admiral Graves had indeed taken drastic action. His superior, Lord George Germain, expressed surprise rather than offense. And France, ever the keen observer, weighed in. Their foreign secretary couldn't fathom this, quote, absurd as well as barbaric procedure from an enlightened and civilized nation. What about Captain Moat? His career bore the scars of his actions. He was repeatedly passed over for promotion. He achieved it only when downplaying his role or omitting it entirely from his record.
Wow.
Captain James Wallace left his mark on the American Revolutionary War. On August 30th, 1775, he commanded the HMS Rose, which was a formidable Royal Navy vessel. And he set his sights on Stonington, Connecticut. Why Stonington?
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Well, the townspeople there had thwarted Rose's tender from capturing a vessel that had sought refuge in their harbor.
Oh.
Here's a twist. Wallace didn't unleash heated rounds or incendiaries upon Stonington. His cannons remained silent in terms of fiery destruction.
Much better.
Yes. In October of 1775, Wallace turned his attention to the town of Bristol, Rhode Island. Why?
I'm guessing they were sympathetic and did something that interfered with his plan to curb insurrection.
Because the town people there refused to deliver livestock to him.
Oh. So this is all racketeering then?
Kind of. So that is...
I can see why that accelerated our rebellion. You know, if they would have just kind of bided their time and treated it, I don't know. The British made so many mistakes in this conflict.
Oh, everybody made mistakes in the conflict, but yeah. The British even more so. If they hadn't made so many mistakes, we would still be talking a Queen's English.
You and I would be speaking English. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm. So that's going to bring us to the Battle of Block Island. So, the HMS Glasgow, a sixth-rate 20-gun frigate of the Royal Navy. In early April 1776, under the command of Navy Captain Tringham Howey, she carried dispatches from Newport, Rhode Island, to the British fleet off Charleston, South Carolina. Now, let's rewind a little bit. The Second Continental Congress had already established the Continental Navy in late 75.
Right.
And by February 76, the first ships of the fleet were ready for their maiden voyage.
Wow, that's pretty good turnaround.
Yeah. Commodore Esky Hopkins led a fleet of 8 ships on an expedition to the Bahamas, where the British were rumored to have military stores. In early March, the fleet landed Marines on the island of New Providence and captured the town of Nassau, or Nassau, however you would like to pronounce it.
I've heard Nassau. That's how I'll pronounce it.
Okay.
Okay.
They loaded the fleet's ships, now enlarged to include 2 captured prize ships with military supplies. The fleet sails north with 1 ship dispatched to Philadelphia, while the rest headed for the Block Island Channel. But the journey was fraught with challenges. Outbreaks of fevers and smallpox took a toll on crew's effectiveness. By April 4th, the fleet had reached the waters off Long Island and captured a prize, HMS Hawk, which was also laden with supplies. The next day brought another prize, the Bolton. Now, Commodore Hopkins hoped for more easy prizes. So the fleet continued to cruise off of Block Island that night, and they formed a scouting formation of 2 columns. The right column, led by the USS Cabot, followed by Hopkins' flagship, the USS Alfred, the largest ship of the fleet at 20 guns. The left column was headed by the USS Andrew Doria, followed by the USS Columbus. and trailing behind were the USS Providence, USS Fly, and USS Wasp, escorts for the prizes. That moonlit night was exceptionally clear, the sea a mirror reflecting the celestial glow. At between 01 and 0200 on April 6th, the fleet sailed southward. And there, like two phantoms emerging from the mist, the USS Andrew Doria and the HMS Glasgow spotted each other. 8 leagues, or 20 to 24 nautical miles, southeast of Block Island. Glasgow, bound for Charleston, cut through the waves with purpose. Captain Howie altered course to investigate the fleet. But here's the twist. Commodore Hopkins gave no signals during this encounter. No battle line was formed, nor no formalities observed. Instead, only chaos.
Why? That seems bizarre.
Well, Howie's first encounter was with the USS Cabot, captained by Esky Hopkins' son, John. When hailed for identification, the younger Hopkins replied, "The Columbus and Alfred, a 22-gun frigate." But then an overzealous seaman on his ship tossed a grenade onto the Glasgow's deck.
Ooh.
Cabot, a lightly armed brig, fired an ineffective broadside of 6-pounders, and Glasgow countered with 2 broadsides, its heavier weaponry wreaking havoc. Cabot's master fell, Hopkins was wounded, and her steering disabled. And as Cabot drifted away, the USS Alfred joined the fray. The 2 ships engaged in a broadside duel. This looked like 2 dueling titans. A shot from Glasgow broke the lines to Alfred's tiller, leaving her temporarily adrift and exposed to raking fire.
Uh-oh.
The USS Andrew Doria struggled to join the battle, maneuvering to avoid the drifting Cabot. Meanwhile, the USS Providence held back, and the USS Columbus eventually joined late, but her fire was wild, causing little damage to Glasgow. So Glasgow is now exposed to fire from 3 ships. Howie made a fateful decision: break off the battle to avoid being boarded, and he set sail for Newport. Despite extensive damage to sail and rigging, pursuing fleet laden with its captured goods chased him for several hours. So the HMS Glasgow now bears the scars of battle. But the poor quality of Continental Fleet's gunnery was now laid bare. Pretty much all the casualties were due to musket fire instead of cannon fire.
That's unusual for the time.
Well, again, this is a brand new Navy.
Yeah, that's true.
On the USS Cabot, 4 men fell, 7 were wounded. The USS Alfred mirrored the tally, 6 killed, 6 wounded. And even the drummer on the Andrew Doria felt the sting of battle. Let's talk about the aftermath. Although the Continental Congress, President John Hancock praised Commodore Hopkins for his fleet's performance, the failure to capture the Glasgow left opponents of the Navy, both in and out of Congress, ready to pounce. Nicholas Biddle, never one to mince words, called it, quote, a more imprudent, ill-conceived affair. Abraham Whipple, captain of the Columbus, faced rumors of cowardice. So he demanded a court-martial to clear his name. And the verdict?
Guilty?
Cleared of cowardice.
Oh, good.
But criticized for errors of judgment.
Well, who hasn't? Who amongst us hasn't had errors of judgment?
Now, John Hazard, captain of the Providence, wasn't so fortunate. He was charged with offenses including neglect of duty during the Glasgow action, and he was convicted and forced to surrender his commission.
Oh.
And then there's Commodore Hopkins. Scrutiny from Congress came not just for his action, but for other matters too. Violating written orders by sailing to Nassau instead of Virginia and the Carolinas. Check. Distributing goods without consulting Congress. Check. He was censured and dismissed from the Navy in January of 1778 and trapped at Providence, Rhode Island by the British occupation of Newport. Yeah. Now, as for the Glasgow, she sailed on and suffering from her battle wounds. So that's the battle.
That was a good one.
That's it? That was a good one?
Well, I mean, please understand that we just came off of lots of arson and, I guess, war crimes before that was really defined. You know, as an enlightened society would be derelict in doing by laying waste to rebellious city. Anyway, this was actually hey, we're going to shoot at you, you're going to shoot at us, and we're at war, you see?
That was more of an equal footing, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I would say so. Or at least, not laying waste to the pre-winter Northeast. That was not a good one. And just to give you a baseline of what a good one isn't, this is a good one.
If the naval gunfire from the Americans had actually been what it was supposed to be, the Glasgow never would have escaped.
Oh,
so
right.
Everybody was right. That should have been different.
Agreed. But now they can go home and tell their colleagues that, hey, something is up. We should probably let off the gas. But they didn't have an internal combustion engine back then, so they wouldn't have understood that phrase. So that's why the war continued.
All right, so we're going to move on to the Battle of Turtle Gut Inlet.
Okay.
So you like that name?
No. It's gross.
So to thwart the Americans from recovering war supplies to the port of Philadelphia, the British Navy established a formidable blockade of the Delaware Bay. Picture it. Over 240 cannons posed for action. Ooh. Now, the Americans aren't about to back down. They fortified the river with chevaux de frise. These are wooden spikes right in the shipping channel. So let's talk a little bit about a daring voyage. Robert Morris of Philadelphia chartered the newly built brig, also known as a brigante, the Nancy, and entrusted her to Captain Hugh Montgomery. Their mission?
If they chose to accept it?
To transport gunpowder and arms.
That was where I was going to follow up with. That was clearly the answer.
1776, John Barry took the helm as captain of the 14-gun Lexington in the Continental Navy. What do you think his orders were?
Transport, arms, powder, supplies, munitions, maybe food.
No.
Oh.
To protect the privateer Nancy.
Oh.
She had the supplies.
Okay.
She had supplies from the Caribbean islands of St. Thomas and St. Croix. She sailed for Philadelphia carrying, quote, 386 barrels of gunpowder, 50 firelocks, 101 hogsheads of rum, 62 hogsheads of sugar, etc. on board.
Hogshead is 63 gallons for those unfamiliar with that unit of measure.
Cool. I like that. Thank you.
No problem. That's a lot of sugar and powder. It's a lot.
Yeah. Now here's a twist. Nancy only had 11-man crew and 6 cannons. Big old ship. Very underpowered.
Oh, yeah.
They soon found allies. The 18-gun Reprisal, captained by Lambert Wicks, and the 8-gun Wasp, captained by William Halleck. They joined forces, and their destination,
Bangor, Maine.
Cape May.
Ah, I am not doing well this round.
So, meanwhile, the British blockade forces were not just a backdrop. They were led by the 28-gun HMS Liverpool, captained by Henry Belleau, and included the 32-gun HMS Orpheus, captained by Charles Hudson, and the 16-gun HMS Kingfisher, captained by Alexander Graham. And, as if choreographed by fate, the vanguard of the British fleet, over 100 ships, prepared to enter New York Harbor on the morning of June 29th. Late on the afternoon of June 28th, a lookout on the HMS Kingfisher spotted the Nancy sailing towards Cape May. And the chase is now on. The HMS Orpheus joined the pursuit. The American lookout at Cape May also caught sight of Nancy, and Captain John Barry aboard the USS Lexington received a message via flag code. Nancy needed help.
Yeah, help. Right.
Barry signaled the USS Reprisal and the USS Wasp, then met with their captains to plan the response. In the early hours of June 29th, with the British Orpheus and Kingfisher hot on their tail, Nancy faces a dilemma. Blocked from entering the Delaware Bay, she veered towards the nearby Turtle Gut Inlet, a path shrouded in heavy fog. But fate has other plans. Nancy ran aground, while the larger British ships remained in deeper waters. The British shelled Nancy, and the Americans scrambled to salvage the cargo, especially the precious gunpowder kegs. Captain Barry divided the crew into two operations. One group returned cannon fire to keep the British at bay, while the other transferred cargo onto longboats. Local residents on shore helped unload and secure the goods behind the dunes. By late morning, 265 to 286 kegs of gunpowder had been removed. But Nancy is also heavily damaged. And then came a daring move. Barry ordered the main rail wrapped around 50 pounds of gunpowder, creating a long fuse from the remaining kegs in the hold to the deck and over the side. As the crew abandoned ship, one last sailor climbed the mast to remove the American flag. The British, seeing the flag lowered, assumed surrender and quickly boarded Nancy. But the fuse had reached the hold. The gunpowder exploded with a colossal blast felt for miles. This claimed a number of British lives. Captain Graham of the Kingfisher reported the loss of his master's mate and 6 men from the longboats. So the Battle of Cape May was a testament to American resourcefulness, leaving an indelible mark on both sides. The British Navy is impressed by the Americans' ingenuity and shifted their blockade of Philadelphia further from the Cape May area. Now let's shift focus back to Captain John Barry.
All right.
He salvaged most of the gunpowder cargo and drove off 2 Royal Navy ships. His actions were swiftly noted, which was an important step in his career. Now, Captain Wicks, aboard the Reprisal, continued his mission to the West Indies. So that is the Battle of Turtle Gut Inlet.
Yeah, when you mentioned it was surrounded by fog, I figured that's what turtle guts are made out of. So I don't want to hit a turtle. Make fog.
So you think the inside of turtles are foggy?
Well, that's the only logical conclusion. Do the math.
Okay.
All right. See, the math checks out.
Okay. So, shall we move on to the next battle?
Yes. Oh, I did want to say that was very tricky to lower the flag just to entrap a lot of British sailors and then have them annihilated via explosion.
Well, I don't know if that was what the goal was. I think the goal was just to save the flag. But the British interpreted that as surrender because that's how you indicate surrender as seas by lowering your colors.
Right.
So maybe it was a trap. Maybe it was just,
Dumb luck.
yeah. So we're going to move on to the Penobscot expedition. So following the partially successful raid on Machias in 1777, as well as General John Burgoyne's failed Saratoga campaign, British war planners sought alternative ways to gain control over the rebellious New England colonies. While most of their effort was directed at another campaign targeting the southern colonies, they had their eyes on the coast of the District of Maine. Their goal? What do you think their goal was?
Lobster comes to mind, but I'm probably wrong. I'm thinking to get supplies, like to either raid a community or maybe I don't know, at this slate of this, I don't think it's to punish anything. I think it would be to occupy.
It was to establish a base that could protect Nova Scotia's shipping and communities from American privateers and raiders.
Wow. It's a pretty good location for that
Yeah.
purpose.
Yes. Yes. So enter John Nutting, a loyalist who had piloted Sir George Collier's expedition against Machias. So Nutting arrived in London with an audacious idea. It was to establish a British military presence in Maine. In September of 1778, he set sail for New York carrying orders from Lieutenant General Sir Henry Clinton. His mission? To assist in establishing a providence between the Penobscot and St. Croix River. The post would be taken on the Penobscot River. And what name do you think they chose for this province?
Penobscot province. Oh, hold on, wait. No. It's going to be something to do with British. It's going to be New Gloucester.
No. You got one of the words correct,
Oh.
though.
New
New.
Haven. No. New Beach.
New Ireland.
Okay.
But, fate intervenes. Nutting's ship falls prey to an American privateer, and he was forced to dump his dispatches. The grand plan for New Ireland met its end. John Nutting reached New York in January of 1779, but General Clinton had already received copies of the orders from other messengers. So, the mission to establish a British military presence on the coast of Maine. So General Francis McLean, based in Halifax, took the helm of this expedition. On May 30th, 1779, McLean's forces set sail from Halifax, bound for Penobscot Bay. Do you know what their destination was?
I'm guessing New York.
A peninsula known as Majapahwadas,
I was
which is
way
now
off.
Castelline.
Oh, all right.
This is nestled between the mouth of the Bagaduce River and a finger of the bay leading to the Penobscot River.
Okay.
The troops, approximately 700, included 50 men of the Royal Artillery and Engineers, 450 of the 74th Regiment of Highland Foot, and 200 of the 82nd Regiment, or Duke of Hamilton's regiment. Their mission was to build a fortification on the peninsula, commanding the principal passage into the inner harbor. The heart of this endeavor was Fort George, nestled in the center of the small peninsula. 2 batteries stood outside the fort, providing cover for the Albany, the only ship expected to stay in the area. And on a island south of the bay, another battery was constructed near the mouth of the Bagaduce River. But rumors swirled. An American expedition was being raised to oppose them. So the troops redoubled their efforts, preparing work suitable for defense against the Americans. And Captain Henry Mowat, familiar with Massachusetts politics, took the rumors seriously. When word reached the American authorities in Boston, they sprang into action, urgently plotting to dislodge the British from the area. The Penobscot River served as the gateway to lands controlled by the Penobscot Indians, who generally favored the British cause. But Congress feared that if a fort were successfully erected at the river's mouth, any chance of enlisting the Native Americans as allies would vanish. So to spearhead this daring expedition, Massachusetts petitioned Congress for the use of 3 Continental Navy warships, the 32-gun frigate Warren. But that's not all. The rest of the fleet, comprising over 40 ships, included vessels from the Massachusetts States Navy and private ships under the command of Commodore Dudley Sultans. And so on July 24th, the expedition set sail from Boston. Its destination, Penobscot Bay.
Stuff's about to go down. That's all I know.
Yeah. So on July 25th, things get pretty intense out on the water. 9 of our beefier American vessels decided to have a little chat with the Royal Navy ships. You know, the kind of chat that involves cannons and gunpowder.
Yeah.
So they went at it from 1530 to 1900. You know, a proper maritime showdown.
Average conversation length, yeah. Little long.
Yeah. While this naval drama unfolded, 7 American boats thought, hey, let's make a beach landing. Well, they got close to the shore, but then, bam, enemy fire took down one of the native warriors who was fighting alongside them.
Oh.
So the boats did a pretty quick U-turn and hightailed it out of there. On July 26, our guy Lovell had a plan. He sent a bunch of Continental Marines to nab the British battery on Nautilus Island. Meanwhile, the local militia was supposed to land at Bagaduce. But guess what? The militia chickened out when a British shot flipped over their lead boat, and poor Major Daniel Littlefield and 2 of his crew ended up in Davy Jones's locker. Now, here's where it gets interesting. 750 men under Lovell's command made it ashore. And what did they do?
Celebrate. Making it to shore.
They started building siege works.
Really?
Yep, right there on the beach, under a constant barrage of enemy fire.
That's impressive.
Now let's move on to July 27th. The American artillery decided to give the British fleet a taste of their own medicine. For a solid 3 hours, they bombarded these ships, leaving 4 British sailors on the HMS Albany nursing. So July 28th, the sun hadn't even peeked over the horizon when Brigadier General Peleg Wadsworth rallied his troops, 400 strong. And these weren't just any troops. They had 200 Marines and 200 militia ready. Their mission? Storm the British fort perched on Dykes' Head. That was on the tip of the peninsula. Now, the approach wasn't a leisurely stroll along the beach. No. They landed on a narrow strip of sand, waves lapping at their boots, and then, with their muskets at the ready, they scaled the steep bluff leading to the fort. The British pickets, led by Lieutenant John Moore, stood their ground. Now here's a twist. No reinforcements came from the fort. Not a soul.
Really?
So the Americans leads pushed forward, wrestling control of the heights. Now, General Lovell had a different plan. Instead of a full frontal assault on the fort, he decided to play the long game. Picture this: battery of cannon set up just a stone's throw away from the British lines.
Okay.
Lovell aimed to bombard them into submission. Now let's talk casualties. The assault had taken its toll. 100 out of 400 lay wounded or worse,
Whoa.
scattered along the shore and the bank. The Continental Marines had bore the brunt of it. Commodore Saltonstall, he had seen enough. He put his foot down, refusing to send more Marines ashore. And, I can't blame him.
Yeah, that's a serious amount of casualties. Why would you want to add to that?
Yeah. July 29th rolls along. One American falls. July 30th saw no respite. And on July 31st, 2 American sailors were wounded. So let's talk a little bit about some strategy. General Lovell had his eyes on the Half Moon Battery. It sat next to Fort George, menacing the shipping lanes. So under the cloak of night, men led by Colonel Samuel McNabb crept forth. Unfortunately, McCobb's center column faltered, breaking against the British fire. But there's still hope. The left column, led by Captain Thomas Carnes and his Marines, surged forward, and on the right, sailors from the fleet charged alongside them. And together they stormed the battery, taking it from the British.
Nice.
At dawn, the fort's guns fired on the captured battery, and a detachment of lobsterbacks reclaimed the Half Moon. So the Americans, they took 18 prisoners with them, but their own ranks were not untouched. 4 missing and 12 wounded.
Yeah.
So the siege rumbles on. On August 2nd, a militiaman from Falmouth, Wheeler Riggs, had a fateful day. An enemy cannonball ricocheted off a tree, finding its mark, and Riggs falls.
Whoa.
On August 6th, a shadow falls over the land. An American allied Native American lost and another captured. On August 7th, a curious skirmish unfolds. 100 Americans squared off against 80 British. You know what the outcome was?
Well, Americans have the numbers. I would think the Americans took them.
Well, we lost 1 with 1 wounded,
Okay.
and the British, 2 were wounded.
That's surprising. I expected more casualties.
That's why it was curious. Across the pond, British Commander George Colliner received word that they needed reinforcements. So on August 3rd, 10 warships sailed from New York. And then on August 11th, the American militia, fortified and resolute, claimed an abandoned battery. But as you would expect, the British, with 55 troops, said, "No way,"
Yeah.
and attacked them. So that will bring us to August 13th. Picture this: the sun hangs low, casting long shadows across the Penobscot River. The American fleet, once proud and defiant, now fled upstream like startled birds. Do you know why?
I guess they got scared, as birds tend to do. Maybe. I don't know.
Well, it's because the British relief fleet, led by Collier, was hot on their heels.
I could see that.
Yeah. Now, the day before, Saltonstall, the man with the naval plan, finally gave the nod. Attack. The British fort, which was a thorn in their side, was the target. But, that's when Colliner's fleet swooped down. So this chase, 2 days of desperate maneuvers. Some vessels meet their ends, scuttled or set ablaze. Bangor, with its treacherous rapids, witnessed the drama. Just imagine wooden hulls crashing against rocks, men clinging to life, and the river's roar drowning their cries.
Ooh.
Now, the surviving crews, at this point in time, they're starving, they're parched, they're low on powder. So they choose a different path. They abandon ship.
All right.
Over land, they trudge back to Boston, where, safety awaited them. So the toll of this siege. Colonel David Stewart chronicled the British garrison suffering. 25 lives extinguished, 34 souls wounded. 26 prisoners on July 28th, 100 souls were extinguished. And on August 4th, saw more wounded. 12 lives lost, 16 wounded, and 1 captured. And so in total, not less than 150 men were lost. 474 killed, wounded, captured, or missing. So a committee of inquiry was launched. The verdict? An American failure. Commodore Saltonstall, court-martialed, found guilty, and was stripped of his naval stripes.
Whoa.
Paul Revere was there, and he faced accusations of disobedience and cowardice. Peleg Wadsworth was spared during his court-martial because they recognized that his valor on what he did.
All right.
Now, over in England, the 1783 Peace of Paris dictated their withdrawal. And this made the dream of New Ireland go bye-bye. Now, when the War of 1812 started, they were like, hey, you guys know what? Let's get back New Ireland.
Yeah. It's the perfect opportunity to do so.
Yeah. In 1842, the Webster-Ashburn Treaty created the 23rd state in the Union.
I'm trying to guess which state that is. 23rd. We'll say Minnesota.
Maine.
Oh, that's right. It wasn't one of the original 13, even though it was East Coast. At least I had the right letters that started just letter M. That's the only one.
Yeah. M8.
Yeah. Well, I went Minnesota, so M-I. That was...
Oh, yeah. Okay.
That's fine.
So M.
Let's not belabor the point.
The expedition faltered. Differences among the commanders, left them adrift. And the British at Castine allowed a prize to exclude their grasp. And on August 13th, disaster strikes.
Uh-oh.
The fleet scattered and ships were lost to the abyss. Some were sunk, some were scuttled, and some were consumed by flames. The Defiance, which was a brig, did not surrender and met her fiery end in the harbor of Stockton Springs in Maine. 2, the Maine Maritime Academy and MIT embarked on a quest. A sonar survey would unveil the Defiance's resting place.
Really? That's cool.
And divers surfaced with artifacts, a cannon, and further dives revealed the extent of the Defiance, or the state of Defiance, and she is remarkably well preserved under layers of mud.
That's cool.
Across the river, the earthworks of Fort George still stand.
That's impressive.
So that was the Embuscade expedition.
That was fascinating. That was a lot of varied conflict.
Yeah. So we have a couple more if you want to just go for it.
Sure.
So the action of July 21st, 1781. The Spanish River, nestled in the Cape Breton Island, had a secret. The promise of coal.
Oh.
So a British convoy sailed forth, 18 ships in tow. Among them, the coal transporters, were big. They had 9 vessels laden with this black gold, as they
Wow.
called it. Their escorts, they had the frigate Charlestown, the sloops Alliance and Vulture, the Vernon, and the Jack. But on the horizon, 2 French ships, frigates, the Austrie, under La Perouse and Herman, commanded by La Touche-Treville. They see the British. The French boats had copper hulls,
Oh.
and they closed in. Now, the Charlestown bore the brunt of this attack. Her main shaft was shattered, and her officers started falling. And Jack struck her colors. As night came down, Captain George of the British ship Vulture led the damaged escorts into harbor. The French, they lose 6, and the British, 17 were wounded. The convoy picked up its load of gold at the Spanish River and delivered it to Halifax. And while this is happening, the French captures the British ship Thorn off of Halifax Harbor, along with 3 merchantmen. The next year, the British do end up reclaiming Jack in the naval battle of Halifax. So that's that battle.
That was pretty
Nice and
brief,
easy
yeah.
and short.
Not a lot of American involvement. None.
Yeah. So let's talk about the battle off of Halifax.
Okay. Where the Jack was reclaimed?
Yes.
Okay.
So Nova Scotia found itself at the heart of conflict. American privateers descended upon Nova Scotia's coastal communities like tempests. Their targets? Villages, ships, and, the people's livelihoods.
Yeah, well, that stinks. I understand.
The maritime economy, which was once thriving, was now in tatters, and the towns of Liverpool and Annapolis Royal felt the sting of these raids. So, July 10th, 1780, off the coast of Halifax, is where the British privateer Resolution of 16 guns faced off against the American privateer Viper, 22 guns. So the sea trembles as they circle each other, cannons roaring. For 90 minutes, they pounded each other. Hulls splintering, decks slick with blood. And when the smoke cleared, the toll emerged. 18 British and 33 American sailors. So the privateer Jack has her own tale. She was born a Massachusetts privateer in 1779 and captured 3 prizes on 3 successful cruisers. And in 1780, as we said before, the HMS Pandora and the HMS Dane captured her in the St. Louis River. The British took her into the Quebec Provincial Marine, where she patrolled the fisheries and the St. Lawrence. But off of Cape Breton, 2 French frigates captured her back. And back in Boston, her previous owners reclaimed her and flipped her around and made her a privateer again.
Wow, no kidding.
Then there's the Observer, once a Massachusetts privateer herself, born as the merchantman Amsterdam. She fell into British hands when the HMS Aphrodite seized her in 1781. She was condemned as a prize and found herself in Halifax, where the Royal Navy welcomed her into its fold. So on May 28th of 1782, off the coast of Halifax, Nova Scotia, the Jack approached the 14-gun naval brig Observer. Lieutenant John Crimes commanded the Observer. They closed the gap, and for 2 hours, they danced.
Wow. These ship battles just... I can't imagine your adrenaline pumping for that long as you're just fighting for survival.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but these boats, they're evenly matched. They circled each other, firing and shredding their sails. The British climbed their rigging and tried to board the American boat. The captain, John Ropes, who was at the helm of the Jack, unfortunately fell to cannon fire. Then the afternoon of the 29th, Jack finally struck her colors, and the British claimed her again.
That had to feel nice to reclaim that. You know what I mean?
Right. So that is that battle.
Nice.
One last one.
All right, let's do it.
This is a raid on Lunenburg, Nova Scotia. So American privateers descended upon Nova Scotia's coastal communities. Again, their targets, the villagers, ships, and their livelihoods.
Right.
The Charlotte Town, Prince Edward Island in 1775. Washington's Marblehead Regiment aboard the Hancock and Franklin made an unopposed landing, and 3 days later they expedited to Nova Scotia, reaching Canso. The fisheries worth £50,000 a year to Britain fell. In Lunenburg itself, the 84th Regiment, led by Captain John MacDonald, defended Nova Scotia. Off Lunenburg, they boarded an American privateer. Her crews were ashore at that time seeking plunder. They captured her and they sailed her into Halifax. The Americans launched the Battle of Fort Cumberland and the Siege of St. John, and then the Naval Battle of Halifax. So the raid itself, on July 1st, 1782, 5 American privateers set their course. Captain Noah Stoddard, at the helm of the schooner Scamiel, of 16 guns and 60 men, led the charge. His orders: clear Lunenburg.
What does clear mean?
What do you think?
I think it means get rid of mostly enemy combatants, but that could be everybody.
It could be. So the vessels landed at Red Head, 2 miles from town. Soldiers marched towards the target. But the defenders are aware. The Lunenburg militia, led by Colonel John Crichton, who was a judge, and Major D.C. Jessen, manned the blockhouses. Cannons roar, bullets sang, and the eastern blockhouse held. Around East Point, the privateers regrouped, and the western blockhouse beckoned. They seized it, and Captain Crichton was silenced by cannon fire.
Ooh.
The blockhouse crumbled, and the town was now in danger. So Colonel Clayton surrendered. He was taken aboard the Scammell as a prisoner. And that is that.
Well, that's that then.
So, anything you want to say about any of the battles?
I know we've periodically touched on some naval battles during the American Revolution. I mean, we've interspersed it with some land battles, just kind of how the revolution has progressed. This is the first time we've had kind of back-to-back naval battles, and it does impress upon me about how difficult those were, how sometimes one side would get completely overpowered, just how lopsided the victories were, but in the end, just losing a ship seems like such a humongous loss, just how much material and cost it took to make one, much less man one with all the provisions and whatnot. So each of these battles plays a significant part toward what the conclusion of this war becomes, because there's so much at stake at sea. And it's really interesting to hear it unfold. And all the different players, the British, the French, the Americans. Yeah, it's eye-opening, I think.
All right. So at the end of every episode, we like to honor one of our fallen angels with the help of herocards.us. Today, we are going to honor Sergeant Daniel M. Angus. His hometown was Thonotosassa, Florida. Served with the Marine Corps, 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force, Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. His honors include the Bronze Star, Purple Heart. His date of sacrifice, January 24th, 2010. Killed in action in Helmand Province, Afghanistan. He was 28. So born in Schenectady, New York on November 16th, 1981, Daniel's family moved to Thonotosassa, Florida, on the outskirts of Tampa when he was 2 years old. He graduated from nearby Armwood High School in 2000 and took a job as a construction worker. His family recalls that Daniel loved going to a local mud hole with a large four-wheeler to pick up with his huge pickup truck. His mother, Kathy Angus, told the Tampa Tribune that Daniel joined the United States Marine Corps in 2003, hoping to accomplish something in his life. She said he'd found his calling and intended to make a career with the Corps. Angus served 2 tours in Iraq, the first from July 2004 to February 2005, the second from December 2005 to March 2006. He was promoted to sergeant on May 1st, 2007. While on a fishing trip in Rowan County, Tennessee, Angus met Bonnie Hughes. The two started dating, and Daniel made the 8.5-hour drive from Camp Lejeune, North Carolina, on the weekends. They were married on December 8th, 2009. About 6 weeks later, Sergeant Daniel Angus left for Afghanistan on December 17th, 2009, with 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Division, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Force. His unit was part of the first wave surge of 30,000 military personnel, with a goal to defeat al-Qaeda and the ruling Taliban. Sergeant Angus told a television reporter, quote, "It's a jump and run kind of thing. You never know where you are going to go. It is not my first Christmas away from home, and it won't be my last." Just a month after arriving in Afghanistan on January 24th, 2010, Sergeant Angus was on foot patrol in Helmand Province. An improvised explosive device detonated, claiming the lives of Sergeant Angus, Captain Timothy J. Poole, Bowling Green, Kentucky, and Lance Corporal Zachary D. Smith of Cornell, New York. The night before the attack, Sergeant Angus had called home to say goodnight to his 1-year-old daughter, Caitlin. In an interview with the Knoxville News Sentinel, his wife Bonnie recalled, quote, "She was asleep, but I did put the phone to her ear and told her. She didn't wake up, but she knows. He always did. Don't let her forget who her daddy is, and I won't." Sergeant Daniel McCannon Angus was 28 years old. He is laid to rest with his fellow service members at Florida National Cemetery, Section 603, Site 5. On May 13, 2010, Site Sergeant Angus was posthumously awarded the Bronze Star Medal with a Combat V. His citation reads, "For heroic service in connection with combat operations against the enemy, while serving as a 1st Squad Leader, 2nd Platoon, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 6th Marine Regiment, 2nd Marine Expeditionary Brigade, on 24 January 2010, in support of Operation Enduring Freedom. On that date, while leading the advance party of a platoon combat patrol in an area known to be contested by the enemy, Sergeant Angus's squad came under a heavy volume of effective small arms and medium machine gun fire from 3 directions. Repeatedly exposing himself to a hail of accurate enemy fire, Sergeant Angus inspired his Marines to move across open terrain to a fighting position that could cover other elements of the platoon as they maneuvered. In the middle of the firefight, one of Sergeant Angus's Marines was badly wounded by an enemy improvised explosive device. Rushing under effective fire into the kill zone, Sergeant Angus relied on his knowledge of enemy tactics and repeatedly warned other members of the squad of the possibility of secondary explosive devices and their likely locations. Despite the extraordinary risk to his own life, he ordered his Marines out of the kill zone while he remained to provide treatment to the wounded Marine, until being fatally wounded by a second improvised explosive device that detonated directly at the casualty collection point. By his zealous initiative, courageous actions, and exceptional dedication to duty, Sergeant Angus reflected great credit upon him and were in keeping with the highest tradition in the Marine Corps, the United States Naval Service. So, Sergeant Daniel M. Angus, we thank you.
Thank you.
All right, XO, take us out.
All right. Well, listeners, thank you so much for hanging in there with us and learning more about some U.S. naval history today. We would love to hear from you. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, or compliments, please, there's a number of ways to get a hold of us. You can email us at usnavyhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We are also on X or Twitter. Our handle is at US Navy. I always mess this up. Yes, US Navy History Pod. Right? Yeah, we'll go with that. To be clear, all this stuff's in the show notes, so if I'm wrong, you should check it out and then contact us and say, Christoph, you were wrong, and then I'll gratefully reply because I'm so glad to hear from a listener. Anyway, we're also on YouTube. Catch us there. Spotify, any place where finer podcasts are distributed. We have a Discord, and if you'd like to get on there and chat with us in a little bit more real-time, more interactive, we are there. Again, you can rate, review, and we would love to hear from you. It's so good to share this journey with y'all. So thanks, Captain Dale.
And don't forget our new subscription.
Oh, yeah. So I should talk about that.
Yes.
For paid subscribers, you get behind the curtain look at some bonus content that Dale and I create. If you like the show and would like to support us, we would appreciate it. And in return, we'll give you some cool stuff. So consider it and let us know. We know you're out there. Make yourself known, and we'll have a great time.
And as always, we want to wish you guys fair winds and following sea. Bye.
Bye, everyone.